It's time to talk about the elephant in the room. Was Swedenborg mad? This chapter can seem very abstract, power resulting from the conjunction of good and truth, but it's Swedenborg's opening comments in paragraph 228 that makes it all real for me. He writes, "All the power that a man has is from his understanding and will, for apart from these he is powerless to move a particle of his body." It makes me think of a baby who has active and working muscles, everything indeed they need to walk, run and talk. But without the ability to control and coordinate them, they're useless, and the child is left helpless, merely able to randomly wave their arms and legs. It's like being on a runaway train or a moving car without the use of a working accelerator, brakes or a steering wheel. So this idea relates back to the trinity of love, wisdom and use that we read about in chapter 24. We might have the necessary equipment, but without the desire and knowledge to drive it, it's useless. But what do you make of this? Later in paragraph 228, Swedenborg writes, "Angels have been permitted to activate my steps, my actions, and my tongue and speech as they would, and this by influx into my will and thought, and I have learnt thereby that of myself I could do nothing." I wonder what he's talking about here and how that might manifest. I wonder whether it might be some kind of Tourette's syndrome or a nervous tic, or even appear to some to be madness. I remember talking to a friend of mine many years ago who was familiar with Swedenborg's work. She also happened to be a psychologist. And she made the comment to me that Swedenborg, were he alive today, would likely be diagnosed as schizophrenic. Now, how do you feel about that? Personally, I understand why that would be the case. What Swedenborg writes about is outside of our current scientific worldview. He reports events and experiences that many people today just can't swallow. Folk tend to look back at the religion of centuries past with a somewhat condescending attitude, as though those people were simple, gullible, and susceptible to believe just about anything. And they're quite comfortable for that religion to be relegated safely to the past. But the reality is that just because you don't believe something doesn't mean that it's a product of madness. It just means you don't believe it. Do you remember those gullible ancients? Well, it's worth remembering that the Jewish authorities of Jesus' day didn't believe him either. Read John's Gospel if you think they did. And in the same way, Galileo wasn't believed by the church authorities of his time because they had a vested interest in his being proven wrong. And we had a hard time believing Albert Einstein too. So how do you tell if someone's really mad? I remember another psychologist I know well saying, "Crazy is as crazy does." In other words, have a look at the person's life. How well do they function in their everyday lives and interaction with others? The thing about Swedenborg is that he functioned really quite well throughout his life. He moved in powerful circles. He fulfilled a role in the Swedish government. He continued in his employment. He attended dinner parties and all the normal things of life of his time. And that was witnessed to by those with whom he associated. And unlike most of the mad people I've met, he was sensible enough to acknowledge that many people would find it hard to believe what he had to say. He wrote, "I am well aware of the fact that many people will say that nobody can possibly speak to spirits or angels as long as he is living in the body, and that many will call it delusion. Some will say that I have spread these ideas around so as to win people's trust, while others will say something different again. But none of this deters me, for I have seen, I have heard, I have felt." So what do you think? Was Swedenborg mad? Or was he privy to information the rest of us are simply unaware of? Or perhaps you have another explanation. We'd love to read your thoughts. Share them in the comments below. As always, you're welcome to read along with us or read ahead if you prefer. You may have questions you'd like to ask in the comments. Enjoy the journey.